Good morning, Mexico. I'm María Salazar. Welcome to ADN 40 News. Today is September 21st.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Agustín Barrios Gómez. We're here live from our studios in Mexico City. We've got a great program for you. We've got excellent interviews. Risk of Atlas that eliminates risk. Yes,
in Mexico.
In Mexico.
We also, we have to let people know you have to stick to the end of the show. Towards the end of the show, I did an interview with Bernice King. Who is Bernice King? She is the daughter of Martin Luther King, and she spoke about her father's legacy and what we can learn from his legacy to try to promote peace in our communities, to promote peace in Mexico. So hopefully you'll stick around.
That's fantastic. No, it's going to be a great program. I think.
Why don't we start?
We do have this 1 hour in English,
and
our
right.
second hour from 9 to 10, it's going to be in Spanish and Español.
So why don't we start with the latest information about Hurricane Lorena, which is affecting the coast of Baja California Sur. The Category 1 storm has sustained winds of 140 kilometers per hour, bringing heavy rains in that state, as well as in Sinaloa and Nayarit. It also has caused waves to increase from 3 to 5 meters. So everyone out there, you should be following very closely the news, because boy, it's a dangerous storm
out there. Yeah.
It's a dangerous storm.
And on Friday morning, armed men killed 6 people after storming into a house in Cuernavaca in Morelos. 5 died on the scene and another one while receiving medical attention. This and more is part of our police report. Let's take a look.
A man received a 73-year prison sentence. Jesus N. was indicted for sexually abusing and then killing a minor in Otumba, state of Mexico. He was convicted for feminicide and must pay 200,000 peso fines for damage repair. The former mayor from Amazuac, Morelos, Noé Reynoso Nava, was a victim of an assassination attempt. He received 2 shots, one in the head and his shoulder. He remains in critical condition. So far, there are no arrests. Armando Baños, also known as El Oso or El Viejón, was arrested. He is the alleged leader of an extortion gang against carriers in the state of Mexico. The criminal group called La Nueva Empresa, or the New Company, also commits kidnappings, homicides, and robberies. According to authorities, other 2 similar criminal bands are operating in that region. 2 people were arrested for the murder of Omar Gómez Lucatero, candidate for the municipal mayor of Aguililla, Michoacán. They are Rubén C., also known as El Cuadro, and Nicandro C. They were accused of attacking the victim who was on board his van during a campaign act in June 2018. 2 public transportation robbers were captured in the state of Mexico. They are Victor Manuel N., also known as El Bicho, and Jose Francisco N. These suspects were wanted for robbing a public bus in Chalco on August 5th. There is also a 3rd person involved, Juan Carlos N., who was already indicted and remains at Reclusorio Norte's prison. And in Michoacán, the leader of a criminal group was murdered while being hospitalized. Jesus Cancino, also known as El Apa, was shot in the head. He was under medical care due to another gunshot wound he received on September 4th in Querétaro. ADN 40 News.
Let's go to politics. Andrés Manuel López Obrador highlighted the security upgrade and support they will be providing in Yucatan since he took office. And this and much more is part of the president's agenda for this week.
This week, President Andrés Manuel López Obrador proposed a new amnesty law for nonviolent crimes. The bill was sent to the Chamber of Deputies aimed for people who did not commit serious felonies, such as imprisoned women for abortion, and gives a second chance for others who promise not to break the law again. But the victims must authorize this measure.
Es dejar en libertad a indígenas que están en las cárceles de manera injusta, mujeres, ancianos, quienes no tuvieron una defensa adecuada, que no se les asistió.
The president also pledged to finish rebuilding damaged sites from the September 2017 earthquakes. He claimed that by the end of the year there will be a 40% progress and that rebuilding efforts will conclude by 2020.
Los que no fueron incluidos serán tomados en cuenta. Las obras en proceso en educación, en salud, lo que tiene que ver con edificios históricos, templos, todo se va a concluir.
And on Thursday, the flag was flown at half-mast for a special ceremony to honor the victims of the 1985 and 2017 earthquakes that took place on September 19th.
Vamos a recordar a las víctimas, a sus familiares, amigos, a todo el pueblo de México, de manera especial a los que sufrieron por los sismos de el 85 y de el 2017.
The president also delivered the National Prize for Civil Protection. ADN 40 News.
And for a deeper analysis of the new Amnesty Law, we welcome to the studio Jorge Lara. He is an expert on these issues. Jorge, good morning.
Good morning.
So talk to us. What are we talking about? Are they going to let a whole bunch of criminals go free, and is the situation going to get worse in Mexico, or is it true
That's a very
that the
loaded
people
question.
that they're getting that they're going to let out of
if we were in a court of
prison
law,
should never have been there? Sorry.
If we were in a court of law, somebody would object your question because
It's very loaded.
It implies very much facts. But yes, this amnesty law that has been proposed, it tends to free all these people that has committed these non-violent crimes. In many situations, for example, abortion, robberies, simple robberies, non-violent robberies, not in home robberies. That's important key.
So if somebody goes into your home, even if they don't use violence, this amnesty doesn't apply.
Okay.
It doesn't apply in it does apply in, for example, some lesser drug charges and some serious charges regarding people who has been submitted by violence by the cartels in order to make some felonies regarding.
So if the cartels actually recruited you by having pressured you or blackmailed you, that's also a possibility. So are you worried or not?
This amnesty is supposed to help you, but the question is that how are you going to prove that this happened?
Right.
And how are you going to prove that you were indeed forced to do that or not? I think that's going to be one of the key.
Now, who has to decide that? Who decides that? Does it have to be the attorney or the prosecutor or the judge? I mean,
or the president?
Who finally decides whether a drug trafficking organization pressured you to join them and pressured you to commit crimes?
The Attorney General.
The Attorney General.
The Attorney General in both in federal level and state level. What worries me, for example, in the state level, is that this simple robbery amnesty, because today, if someone gets stolen, gets
Their cell phone,
the phone stolen, or your computer, or your purse in a restaurant or a coffee shop, they have already this amnesty given.
Automatically.
Automatically.
But this is only on the federal level. How is that possible? Doesn't it, I mean, I think this is an issue. These are only supposed to be crimes that apply at the federal level, right?
Well, it's a federal law.
Right.
It should only apply for the federal level. But the federal criminal code has all the range of crimes. What the amnesty law says is that the Secretary of Gobernación, the Secretary of Gobernación, should pursue all the states to have the similar law.
So this potentially is going to apply to all.
Potentially, there will be
states.
32 state law regarding amnesty in the same crimes.
So basically, we're running into a situation that if somebody steals your purse in a restaurant, they automatically have amnesty from now on forever, or is it only if you've been accused of if you're already being prosecuted?
If the law applies as it is redacted
right now,
is from now or from the past until the amnesty is published, approved and published.
So Well, that's extraordinary, right?
I think that's worrisome also.
But why? I know there's a political intention behind this. What is the message?
There's 100 political intention in my view, because as we have already discussed in this table, the accusatory system already has this kind of measures in order to depressure the criminal system,
justice system,
the justice system. I think that this is a political message from the president, that in his campaign he offered this amnesty to the criminal organization in some levels, the impoverished, the women and the young people.
Well, let's do this. You're going to be joining us for the second hour of the show in Spanish, so we'll continue the conversation. Because, boy, I have a lot of questions for you. In fact, I want to ask you about what's going to happen with the investigation of the 43 disappeared students of Ayotzinapa. So make sure you all join us on the second part of our conversation with Jorge Lara, former Deputy Attorney General. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you very much.
And in the 17th World Summit of Nobel Peace Prize laureates, it continues right now in Mérida, Yucatan. 30 Nobel laureates are participating, including 5 former presidents and public figures such as Rigoberto Menchú. The event focuses on world peace, fighting hunger, the role of journalism, the impact of social networks, and drug legalization.
And before this summit took place, I had this extraordinary opportunity to interview Bernice King. Who's Bernice King? She's the daughter of the civil rights activist Martin Luther King Jr. And she spoke to us about the challenges of world peace and how to promote peace in our communities and our homes, how to promote peace in Mexico. Let's watch. Bernice, welcome to Mexico. Thank you so much for joining us. Why are you in Mexico?
I'm here as a delegate for the World Summit of Nobel Peace Laureates. As you know, my father won the Nobel Peace Prize in 1965. So I'm kind of representing him at this summit.
Your family has been victim of violence, political violence, throughout different moments, historical moments in U.S. history. What has your family learned about violence, political violence?
Well, when you look at violence holistically, in terms of the origin of it and the root of it, for my family and my father in particular and mother, the origins happen to be related to a lack, I would say a lack of love. And let me explain that, because when you hear that word, people have so many different thoughts. At the core of love, true love, is a commitment to others. It's an other-centeredness. And in most societies, there's a great deal of self-centeredness and selfishness that drives so many policies. You know, in the latter stages of my father's life, he wrote a book, Where Do We Go From Your Chaos of Community? And in the chapter, The World House, he talked about we have to have this revolution of values, where our loyalties no longer are sectional or tribal, but they're ecumenical, they're global. And when people are not committed to others and they're out for self-preservation, they will go to any means to preserve themselves without regard to the other. And so for us, that really is the core. And when you bring other things into it, you bring in fear, you bring in the cultivation of that self-centeredness that can then create a ripple effect, because violence is like a descending spiral.
You know, we follow very closely what's happening in the United States from Mexico, and we follow what's happening in Europe and other parts of the world. And it seems that your father's ideals, or this idea of promoting peace, has kind of fallen to the wayside. I mean, what should world leaders be doing in order to promote peace?
Well, for us, the vision is the beloved community, a community where there is a regard and respect for the dignity, worth, and value of everyone. And in order to get there, it's nonviolence. My father said in his Nobel Peace Prize statement that the philosophy and strategy of nonviolence needs to immediately become a subject of study and experimentation in all fields of human conflict, not excluding nations. And I think he left that for us. And what I mean by that is, in order for us to get to peace, a more permanent peace, you can have a negative peace. A negative peace is when there is an absence of tension,
right,
but there's not a presence of justice. You know, as he said, the true peace is not merely the absence of tension, but the presence of justice. To get to that true peace, you really have to practice and live nonviolence on a daily basis. It has to be a lifestyle. It has to be incorporated in the way that you see people, the way that you communicate with people, the way that you engage people. But in order to get to justice, in the end, there has to be fundamentally a commitment to living this out day by day. There's no such thing as practicing it one or a few days or a few months or a year, and it's just going to be permanent. Permanent means we have to live it every day.
Well, let me ask you this. Clearly, one of the priorities of this administration, President Andrés Manuel López Obrador, has been, and he talks about pacifying Mexico. And there's different proposals out there. Some of them are controversial. Some of them are not. But what advice would you have for a country like Mexico that is seeking to reduce violence, extreme violence?
Well, I believe if you're going to change something long term, you start with the next generation, and you incorporate that in your school systems. You teach kids about nonviolent, what we call nonviolent reconciliation. You're not just trying to resolve tension and conflict and differences. You're really trying to create a pathway where community can still be a possibility. For example, nonviolence seeks to win friendship and understanding. When you are approaching people, you have to have that in your mind. You have to have that in your heart, that I'm seeking to win this person over, not win over this person. And so, in order for it to happen in a country, I believe that it has to be infused through the different systems. And one of the best systems is the educational system.
Well, thank you. That is very empowering. Thank you so much for joining us.
And in global news, we have another shooting that took place in the United States. This time it was inside a mall in Illinois. The suspect stormed into the site and started shooting. There were no casualties. This and more is part of our global news summary. Let's take a look.
The US drone strike was intended to hit an Islamic State hideout in Afghanistan, but instead it killed at least 30 civilians resting after a day's labor in the fields. The attack Wednesday night also injured another 40 people after accidentally targeting farmers and laborers. They'd just finished collecting pine nuts in eastern Afghanistan. A tribal elder said the workers had lit a bonfire and were sitting together when a drone targeted them. A senior US official in Kabul confirmed the drone strike, but did not share details of civilian casualties. Jihad Isaiah's fighters first appeared in Afghanistan in 2014. The US estimates there are around 2,000 Islamic State fighters in the country.
Benjamin Netanyahu's rival turned down his offer of a national unity government on Thursday. Another abrupt shift in the changing fortunes of Israel's longest-serving prime minister. He has just failed to win a ruling majority for the second time this year, which prompted him to make the surprise offer. Rebuffed by Benny Gantz, whose blue and white party emerged slightly ahead of Netanyahu's right-wing Likud in Tuesday's elections. Gantz has called for a liberal unity government, meaning there's no place for Likud's ultra-orthodox allies. And some sort of coalition will be needed, as is usual in Israel, since no one came close to winning a majority. It could take weeks to form one, and many more reversals are possible. For the Palestinians, though, there may be little difference between hawkish Netanyahu and centrist former armed forces chief Gantz. Their campaigns were similar on many issues, and Netanyahu's fall would be unlikely to bring significant changes on the Palestinian conflict or relations with US President Donald Trump's deeply pro-Israel administration. Although Netanyahu highlighted his close ties to Trump during campaigning, the US president has since appeared to distance himself slightly, telling reporters, "Our relationship is with Israel."
Sea Bubble's new flying water taxi could be the next glamorous way to get around the city of love along the Seine River. Flying here is used loosely by startup Sea Bubbles, as the electric vessel is actually propelled out of the water in order to reduce surface friction in a zero-emission, zero-noise, and zero-wave experience that can reach speeds of just under 21 miles per hour. At around 200,000 euros per taxi to make, Sea Bubble's water taxi can run for up to 2.5 hours before heading back to a literal charging dock that harnesses the power of the water, sun, and wind. Co-founder Alain Thébault calls it the future and says the company aims to make use of, quote, underutilized waterways. Sea Bubbles could launch in Paris as soon as spring 2020 after jumping through regulatory hoops. The project's backers hope to obtain a commercial taxi license so the environmentally conscious consumer can fly, or at least glide, above the Seine.
And we're going to go to commercial break, but please don't go away. We've got much, much more ahead, so we'll be right back. Welcome back to ADN 40 News. I'm María Salazar. Thank you so much for joining us this morning. This week was also marked by a massive drill that took place to remind us and to teach us about what we should do during an earthquake, and to, of course, remember the victims from the earthquake 2 years ago. Let's watch.
The coast in Oaxaca became the epicenter of an 8.6 magnitude earthquake, which threatens the Mexican capital. Thousands of people evacuated buildings located at Tlatelolco's neighborhood to gather at a rendezvous point. That was part of a massive drill to strengthen the disaster prevention culture.
Sí, es muy importante porque nos ayuda a estar preparados para este tipo de eventos. Bastante más ágil que hace 2 años. También me tocó estar aquí en el edificio triangular y pues sí había bastante desorden, y creo que en esta ocasión fue más ágil la evacuación del edificio.
At the corner of Eje Central and Ricardo Flores Magón, a mobile command center coordinates all emergency activities. As part of this massive drill, a military DN3E plan was also activated for emergency responses. And civil protection personnel organized themselves in different groups to bring kids and babies to safety in special cribs. It all happened in utter silence.
Mira, ya se han hecho varios. Yo creo que este es importante porque es un macro simulacro, y yo creo que por la práctica ya lo hemos hecho muy rápido, y hoy pues estamos bien organizados. Y pues se me hace fantástico, ¿no?
No more fists in the air, but only to remember and learn, not to look for more victims under the rubble. ADN 40 News.
And to discuss the impact of the 1985 and 2017 earthquakes, we welcome to Nacheli Ruiz Rivera. She's an investigator from the UNAM's Geography Institute, and we're going to be talking about the Risk Atlas. Nacheli, so there are ways to mitigate risks. This is something that sometimes people don't believe. So talk to us a little bit about how we can do that and what the Risk Atlas does to help us.
Yes, thank you very much for having me today. I think we need to understand two of the most important components of risk. One is the threat, what we call the threat, which is the physical part, let's say the earthquake or the hurricane or the heavy rain. and that's mitigable.
Or a chemical accident.
Yeah,
or
that's
a
true.
nuclear. I mean, because
That's true.
there are a lot of risks out there that are reflected in the risk
Exactly,
atlas.
and we can divide them between those that come from nature and those that come from the social organization, like chemical risk. On the other hand, we have the vulnerability, which is why we are so susceptible to get damaged by these threats. So what we have in a risk atlas are both things together, putting in a map. So we can assess in the map which parts or which territories are most susceptible for damages and what we can do in order to mitigate that, both in the physical part and the vulnerability part.
So is this something that any common person can use, or is this a technical thing that only the experts and leaders can use?
Yeah, basically, until now, it's a thing that is mostly done by scientific experts. All these scenarios, risk scenarios, are made by these specialists. But in the end, if we don't democratize this knowledge, nothing is going to change, because basically the most important actions that we have to do must be done by people itself.
In fact, I mean, what is fascinating, because really very few people know that anybody can access this risk atlas. In fact,
Yes.
I'm going to ask production to see if they could put if you could put the site up so people can see it.
right.
The website,
Here
there
it
it
is.
is.
Exactly.
So this is the Atlas de Riesgo. This is the risk atlas for Mexico City.
Yes.
What can we find, for example, in this risk atlas?
Well,
For Mexico City, for
yes,
example.
in its current way, what we can find are, for example, all the information about the vulnerability, in which we can see, for example, the socioeconomic level of people, because obviously if you are poorer, you will get more affected by risks. But in the other hand, we have this hazard monitor, which means that we can monitor if rain is going to be really heavy, which parts are more susceptible for flooding.
Oh, really?
Yes, you can see that.
So, I mean, well, let me ask you this. I mean, I could think a lot of ways to apply this to our daily life. So, if you're going to buy a property, I mean, is it useful to go into this risk atlas? What could you find out that could help you make a decision as to where to buy an apartment?
Yeah.
Or where to buy a piece of property?
Well, what you can find in its current way is what we call the seismic zoning.
Okay.
Which means that, I mean, how soft the soil in which you are going to build or you are going to buy something. If you see zone 3, basically it means that it was in the lake in Mexico City. Yes. So if you see soil number 1, it's not that it's safer, but the seismic waves impact in much lower way. They are not accelerate that much.
What about flooding? What about other types of risks?
Yes.
Is that also reflected in these types of maps?
Yes, actually what they are trying to incorporate right now in the risk atlas is a real life flooding alert.
Oh, really?
Yes. Which is fantastic, because you can know maybe 1 or 2 hours beforehand where places are going to get more rain, and actually they are prone to flooding, so maybe you can avoid that.
So let me ask you this. I mean, this is not this risk map is not only for Mexico City. There is a risk map for most of the communities around the country.
No, that's one of the issues that we are dealing with. Actually, municipalities must have this, but maybe less than 30% of municipalities in all the country actually get a risk atlas. So it's a deficit. It's a big deficit, because obviously you cannot plan many things in the territory without this information.
We're going to be giving follow-up to this, right?
Right. Yeah, we have to go to commercial break, but when we come back in about 40 minutes, you're going to join us to continue this conversation.
She's going to be on the
Okay, great. Fantastic.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Wow, that's really interesting.
Yeah, let's go to a commercial break. We'll be right back.
thank you so much for joining us this morning here in ADN 40 News. Remember, this is our first hour in English, and then we're going to have another hour of information, news, analysis about what's going on in Mexico in Spanish, starting at 9 a.m. in the morning. But we all really appreciate you joining us. Last Saturday, a coordinated drone attack caused fires and destruction at a major oil processing facility and nearby oil fields in Saudi Arabia. I'm sure you saw this in the newspaper. It knocked out listen to this, half of the world oil supply, which equals to 5%, it was half of the Saudi Arabia oil supply, which equals to 5% of the global output. That's a lot of oil. Saudi Arabia has unveiled new evidence proving that Iranian involvement was behind this. Let's watch.
Pipes melted and towers scorched. The damage that's been left by attacks on Saudi Arabian oil facilities. A strike which both the Kingdom and the United States blame on Iran. Reporters were taken to inspect the site on Friday, where equipment is visibly burnt. Saudi's Aramco production plants in both Khurais and Abqaiq were targeted. Saudi authorities say the Khurais site was hit by 4 missiles, but are confident full production will be resumed by the end of September. The attack, which halved oil output from Saudi Arabia, marks the worst on Gulf oil infrastructure in almost 3 decades. Iran has denied responsibility and vowed wide retaliation should heightened tensions boil over into hostility. Initially, Iran-backed Houthis in Yemen claimed responsibility, but Gulf diplomats are sceptical of that given the sophistication and scale of the attacks, which involved drones and low-flying missiles, according to Saudi officials. This week, the war of words between the US, its Gulf allies and Iran escalated. US Secretary of State Mike Pompeo called the attacks an act of war, and President Donald Trump ordered more unspecified sanctions on Iran. They maintain that the US wants a peaceful solution to the crisis, though. Iran has warned President Trump against being dragged into a war in the Middle East and said it would meet any offensive action with a crushing response.
But Saudi Arabia also worked to recover that oil production and will use its reserves to restore the usual supply to its customers. This announcement changed oil prices that were actually rising very, very quickly. On Friday, the Mexican mixed crude oil decreased at 22 cents to end at $61.10 per barrel, while the Brent barrel crude oil gained 34 cents to end at $64.74 per barrel. And West Texas Intermediate also reported an increase of 33 cents to end at $58.46.
But the news about what happened is mixed. According to the Mexican Institute for Competitiveness, this attack could imply believe it or not, a positive effect on Mexico's public finance, meaning that if oil prices increase, the nation could get, Mexico could get more oil revenues. And the Energy Secretary, Rocío Nale, also said that the oil price forecasted doesn't need to be modified for the 2020 budget proposal.
So to talk about the subject, we welcome to the studio Ricardo Smith, who's an internationalist from the Mexican Council on Foreign Relations. Good morning, Richard.
Good morning, Ricardo. It's good to be here again.
What's going on? So you got Iran sending these semi-high-tech drones, basically, that are invulnerable to these missile defenses that were created in the 70s, 80s, and 90s that Saudi Arabia paid billions
not from the United States, actually, this defense system, and not from Russia, which was also a huge debate inside Saudi Arabia and France.
Yeah.
And right now what is happening is that Saudi Arabia is questioning this alliance with the United States that it built during the first years of the Trump administration.
Right.
We have to remember that Saudi Arabia is the most important ally of the United States in the Middle East, which actually puts the United States at
the Israelis might take offense at that.
That is right.
And they're so close and such good friends that that yesterday evening yesterday there was an announcement by the Secretary of Defense saying that the U.S. is actually going to be sending troops to defend and help and support Saudi Arabia.
Which is also on debate in the United States, because Donald Trump, we know right now, he's trying to pull back troops from Afghanistan. He's trying to end all these endless wars, as they are called in the United States. And right now, a U.S. presence, a military presence on the ground in the Middle East, I don't know how it will look politically, especially with the Democratic candidates right now also going into the debate.
Well, especially because it's based on a request by Saudi Arabia.
Yes.
And the president says we are reacting to that request by the government of Saudi Arabia.
The Saudi royal family, by the way, owns significant real estate that belongs to Donald John Trump, including actually several floors of Trump Towers.
Yes.
Let me ask you this. I mean, we should be watching this closely in Mexico, and sometimes we don't watch these types of news close enough because there is an impact on Mexico. What is the impact from your perspective?
I think first it's an impact on energy markets worldwide. I think right now Mexico is in a position in terms of public finances in which we are highly vulnerable to what is going on in energy markets everywhere, and also in economic terms. What is going on right now is that with the surge in oil prices, we had a specific kind of positivity regarding the next budget.
Right.
And I think we will see that in the future. We will see that as long as Mexico plans to step up oil production, oil exploitation, and this will be a huge impact for our finances, as long as it will be also a source of public revenue.
As long as Mexico increases its production, because there's the other side, which is gasoline, which Mexico imports. So if oil goes up, gasoline probably has to go up. And President Andrés Manuel López Obrador said this week during one of his press conferences that he wasn't worried about that. I mean, he was more, I think he acknowledged this was not a good thing, that what happened to Saudi Arabia, but it's good for Mexico that the price of oil goes up.
In strict terms, this is only a short-term effect. We should be looking towards the long-term effects rather than this other indicators which will not actually affect Mexico's finances, Mexico's production on the long term, on the long run. Also, on the security side, I think it also shows how
unless, of course, there's war between Iran and Saudi Arabia.
That's Iran and the United States.
And, of course, the United States.
For international security right now, the drums of war are again sounding. We had seen de-escalation of the conflict between Iran and the United States. Donald Trump had already said that he was open to meeting with the leaders of Iran. That was a huge progress that we had seen during the previous months. Right now, we are seeing something different. Right now, during the first hours of Sunday and also on Monday, the discussion was about war and whether the United States was willing to intervene and get into a conflict with Iran.
Now, one last question really fast, because we're also going to get to see you in a couple minutes in Spanish. The possibility of a war which would affect the region and could also impact and bring in, Russia. It could also bring in China. I mean, it could become actually a very, very retracted, nasty. That's going to have an impact on the world economy, right?
Of course. Right now, there are forecasts of an economic slowdown generally.
Anyway,
that is right now going on. But again, we are seeing the Middle East right now is a huge center of attention. We are seeing that Russia is also interested in going in. Russia is expanding its influence. So there are a huge number of risks right now, and that could also destabilize the world economy. And with Mexico, we are seeing, as has happened with the migration deal, we are vulnerable to diplomatic maneuvers or pressures, as long as we're also vulnerable in economic terms to other countries.
Oh my God. So we're going to continue this conversation. Thank you so much, Ricardo. See you in a while.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Ricardo, thank you very much. So Donald Trump signed his name on a portion of the border wall, believe it or not. But his vision on border security is being criticized as a waste of money or a symbol of intolerance or both. This and more is part of Donald John Trump's Freaky Week.
Freaky Week.
Donald Trump's week began by visiting the U.S.-Mexico border wall in Otay Mesa, California. He seized the moment by autographing a section of the controversial barrier with a Sharpie, followed by a brief statement.
I think that the This is certainly a tremendous national emergency because of human trafficking, drugs, and people coming in illegally. And in many cases, those people have criminal records, and we don't want them in our country.
He also verified the construction of that wall section aimed to block the passage of undocumented migrants in California, while some demonstrations took place.
Trump no es bienvenido ni en San Diego, ni en California, ni en todo Norteamérica. Realmente es un personaje nefasto. Nosotros lo calificamos de fascista por su carácter de encarcelar a niños, separar a familias, imponer la muerte tanto en la frontera como en todo este país.
Later on, the tycoon published his first tweet in Spanish with the phrase, "No more fake asylum, no more catch and release, no more illegal entry into the United States." The message comes after the Supreme Court allowed Trump's new asylum restrictions to take effect. Moreover, the president also appointed Robert O'Brien as his new national security advisor. He was previously the special presidential envoy for hostage affairs at the State Department, an announcement which came after John Bolton was fired for having several disagreements with the commander-in-chief on several issues. Trump also changed his mind regarding Facebook, a company that he has criticized on several occasions. The president met this week with the social network CEO Mark Zuckerberg at the White House before engaging on a private meeting. After that, Senator Josh Hawley asked Facebook to sell Instagram and WhatsApp, two of the company's lifeboats, to prove that Mark is serious about protecting data privacy. Finally, Trump filed a lawsuit against Manhattan's District Attorney Cyrus Vance Jr. and his accounting firm, after news broke that the prosecutor have subpoenaed years of Trump's personal and corporate tax returns. It's worth mentioning that the Republican is the first president in 4 decades in not releasing his tax returns. ADN 40 News.
Wow. No más falso asilo. That's what President Donald Trump tweeted this week. To talk about this, and joining us today is Alan Bersin. He's a senior fellow at Harvard, at the Kennedy School at Harvard, and former Commissioner of Customs and Border Protection. Alan, welcome to the show.
Good morning, Alan.
Good morning. Buenos dias.
Buenos dias. Alan, President Donald Trump went to the border this week in the San Diego area, and he was basically very excited about his wall. What is the status of the wall in terms of how much of it do you think he's going to be able to construct in the next year and a half before elections take place?
The visit of President Trump to the wall in San Diego made a political impact for him, but the fact of the matter is that the wall is not going to be built as originally indicated during the campaign in 2016. He has not been able to get Congress, nor including many Republicans in the border state, to support it. So this visit on the heels of a fundraising trip to San Diego was, as much occurs in the United States today, not reflective of the underlying reality with regard to the wall. The wall that he did get was a replacement and a upgrading of barriers that previously existed. So I think, again, we should watch what is actually going on rather than what the president would like to focus on in the context of border management and security.
Alan, what is the current situation of at the border? Is there still a sense among the political class in Washington that this is still in crisis, or are we seeing a sort of a toning down of this, and with the negotiations going on with Central America, safe third countries, and the threats and all of that, is that having an effect?
There's no question that the number of people that have come to the border during August is down to 50,000 compared to 144,000 in May of this year. that is definitely an improvement, and we should discuss the reasons for it, which are primarily the actions taken by the government of Mexico. At the same time, at an annual rate of 600,000 migrants, the number of migrants still showing up at the border is double what it was when President Obama left office in 2017. So it depends on what you mean by crisis. The decrease in the number of people coming is undoubtedly reflective of the actions that Mexico has taken in deploying National Guard, now I believe at the level of 20,000 in south of the Isthmus of Tehuantepec. The other reason is that the asylum system no longer is a loophole, or increasingly is no longer a loophole for smugglers to bring people in, claim asylum, or have families permitted to remain in the United States to wait for asylum hearings that take 3 or 4 years to occur. At the same time,
I'm sorry, let me just ask you one fast question, because we're running out of time, and thank you so much for joining us. There still continues to be concerns by the Mexican government that the U.S. is going to force Mexico to sign a third safe country. Salvador has signed this agreement, Guatemala has signed the agreement, I believe Honduras has signed this agreement. Do you think that there's going to be pressure by Donald Trump to force Mexico to sign a third safe country agreement?
He really doesn't have to do that, Ana Maria, because in fact the actions taken by the government of Mexico provide the same result to Trump. By making now 42,000 people wait in the border cities in northern Mexico and not being permitted to come into the country, in effect, what the safe third country agreement would accomplish is being accomplished without the necessity for a formal agreement. The difficulty here is that the manner in which the Trump administration has really compelled through economic threat the government of Mexico to take these actions is not a good sign for the future in terms of the resentment that's being engendered not only among the Mexican people but also the Mexican government.
Alan, thank you so much for joining us this morning. We really appreciate you sharing this information. Boy, it's very interesting. Promise me you'll come back. Thank you so much, Alan Bersin.
Alan Bersin, thank you. And this is an ADN40 ADN 40 News alert. Paris is the stage of several protests currently against climate change. We're actually watching, that's live footage right now from Paris. This is just part of other massive demonstrations that have taken place around the world. This has been one of the most important news stories of the week, and we're seeing this take place right now in Paris.
Wow. Very, wow. Breaking news.